developments as an appropriate use. I also, staff is recommending approval of the request to rezone from RMD to R15.
Thank you, Ashley. And the applicant, Mr. Steinhauer, is not here. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Or,
I'm here on his behalf,
okay.
so
Would you?
hear anything from you?
Yes, sir.
I think you guys know he's on vacation.
Okay.
What is, I guess,
Oh, For the record, sir, what's your name
my
and?
name is Mike Severs.
Okay.
I'm here on behalf of that investment.
Okay.
Steinhauer.
Thank you.
We're just seeking to rezone it. I think everything was said, from REMD to R15 with a minimum of 1,200 square foot. We're asking to zone this so we can meet the needs of the community, providing a quality, affordable homes to fit into the historic Mill District, and we will fit appropriately onto the lot. If you recall, in 2023, I think across the street, we did the same thing, so
Yes, sir.
we're just seeking to ask that.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Severs? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Severs. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Are there any questions of Ashley from the Planning Commission? Okay. We do not have anybody but Mr. Severs signed up to speak for, and he was representing the applicant, and there's no one signed up to speak against the request for rezoning. Ashley and I were having a conversation before the meeting. You know, this follows the steps of trying to make these lots less non-conforming if you can, but it's in the lines of spot zoning, and that could create some issues for the city in the future. But this is a action that the city council has taken for some time to get some.
So, there we go. I was wondering. So, yeah, if you have any questions, just let me know.
No other questions. Chair will entertain a motion. So we have a motion to recommend approval of the zoning change from RMD to R15 for this location 1705. Is that correct? 1705. Or 304 Cedar Street. Excuse me. I'm pulling numbers out of there. A motion's on the floor and a second. Are there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. That motion passes unanimous. The next item is a variance request for 304 Cedar Street, requesting a variance to construct a 1,200 square foot single-family detached home. Ashley, would you introduce us for us, please?
Yes. If you will bear with me for 1 second, I might be able to actually pull up our PowerPoint now. Oh, drats. Nope, I won't be able to. So
Okay.
sorry.
Sorry. So this is a variance from section 3.1.2A2 to allow for a construction of single-family detached home with a minimum heated square foot of 1,200.
Yes, so the code currently requires all homes constructed within the city, all new homes constructed within the city to be 1,600 square feet. So the applicant has requested to decrease that to 1,200 square feet, and they want to be more comparable to the other homes on similar sized lots within this area. This property is located within the historic mill district, and the average heated square footage of the homes in the area is around 1,000 square feet, based on some measurements and information that we got from Q Public. While the property itself is considered to be non-conforming in terms of dimensional requirements, the calculation for dimensional requirements under section 3.1.2.b of the city's UDC for single-family detached uses on deficient lots of record does not pertain to the lessening of minimum heated square footage. So in the code, there's a ratio you can use to decrease setbacks, but you can't decrease the square footage of a home according to the code. So that's the reason for this variance. Variance approval would be the only means to allow for lesser minimum heated square footage. There do appear to be special conditions and or circumstances due to the current dimensions of the property and its current zoning, as well as the size of homes on surrounding properties in the area. This property is considered non-conforming. This variance request is being done in conjunction with the rezone request that would rezone it to a district more closely aligns with the current dimensions of the property. And the special conditions and or circumstances do not appear to result from the actions of the applicant. And the special conditions and or circumstances do not appear to be financial in nature. And approving the requested variance does not appear as if it would confer special privilege on the applicant, as the variance requested would align with the average home size of properties in the immediate area. So staff recommends approval of the request for a variance from section 3.1.2.8.2 of the city's UDC to allow for the construction of a single-family detached home with a minimum heated square footage of 1,200 square feet. So we're just decreasing by 400 square feet.
All right. Mr. Severs, you're the representative for the applicant. Would you like to speak on this request as well?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Unless you have any questions, very little I can answer on that.
Okay. So the lot size, before we'll get into the discussion, we did not have anyone signed up to speak in favor of the variance request or in opposition. Therefore, we'll close the public hearing on the variance request for 304 Cedar Street. The lot size is 7,840 square feet. Other communities around us are putting 1,800 to 2,400 square foot houses on smaller lots, 5,500 square foot, 6,000 square foot lots. It's pretty square at 83 feet wide at the front and 94, almost 95 feet deep at the back. Would a house that conforms at 1,600 square feet, would it be consistent with the houses around it? No, not at all. It would obviously be the biggest house on the block, so to speak. But as far as any dimensional requirements, any hardships created by the dimension of the lot, I find it hard to believe a 1,600 square foot house wouldn't fit on that. But what does the commission say, think? How do you feel about this?
Just a brief search on Q Public, it's the biggest house on that side of the road. If they build it 1,200 square feet. So it fits in the neighborhood with what's there now versus trying to build the biggest house that'll fit on the lot and it not fitting.
Ms. Brown, any comments, concerns? Okay. 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 Well, just know that without any justification, the next request, it would be hard to deny if this is approved. So with no other discussion, the chair will entertain a motion.
Can we open and close the public hearing just?
I did.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Okay, we have a motion to approve the variance as requested and a second. No other discussion?
I think Sycamores.
All in favor signify by raising your hand. All opposed, like sign. I want to record opposed. So the next request is a variance request for 0 Alcovey Road, unaddressed piece of property as tax parcel SC 020001. It's a request from variance to allow 750 linear feet of roadway prior to installing turnarounds. This property is located on Alcova Drive across from the Passive Park in a subdivision known as Westland Park. Ashley, if you'll introduce this for us.
Yes, so this is for the Westland Park subdivision, specifically phase 2, so the back half of that subdivision. They are requesting a variance from section 9.2.1.a.6 of the city's UDC to allow for 750 linear feet of roadway prior to installing a turnaround or cul-de-sac rather than the requirement of 250 feet as outlined by the UDC. So the applicant has requested that variance, like I said, the UDC dictates 250 feet, and there is an exhibit within your packet that shows what that would look like. Okay, you have it, okay. So this, like I said, this would be applicable to phase 2 of the Westland Park subdivision currently being developed at 0 Alcova Drive. The subdivision will consist of up to 48 single-family lots. However, with these lots being on septic, they will be required to have a minimum lot width of 100 feet. Therefore, given this dimensional requirement, a turnaround or cul-de-sac would be required every 2.5 lots, as shown on the Westland Park Phase 2 preliminary plan concept, which is labeled as Exhibit A in your packet. The proposed preliminary plat for Phase 2 of Westland Park Exhibit B displays what Phase 2 would look like with the approval of the requested variance. So that is this right here on packet page 74. So you can see it cleans up, especially that middle spot there. The International Fire Code, or the IFC, only requires developers to have a maximum of 750 feet between cul-de-sacs for roads 26 foot in width. Per section 9.2.1 of the UDC, the developer would still be required to install roadways with a width of 26 feet on the inside of the curbs, face of curb to face of curb. So the variance does appear to be consistent. The variance request does appear to be consistent with the intent of the UDC in terms of complying with the IFC. And the use does not appear to be harmful to public health, safety, or welfare. There does not appear to be any special conditions and or circumstances. And it doesn't appear that we would be granting special privilege. I also believe that this may be a Scrivener's error in our code, because 250 feet, as you can see, based off of Exhibit A, it is kind of egregious to have that many cul-de-sacs in a neighborhood. So I'm looking into getting that amended just through the proper processes, but in order for this project to move forward, they needed to go ahead and get that variance. So staff recommends approval of the request for a variance from section 9.2.1.a.6 of the city's UDC to allow for 750 linear feet of roadway prior to installing the required turnarounds / cul-de-sacs.
Thank you, Ashley. And going through the creation of the UDC, that was something that the Clark Patterson Lee, the consultants, we looked at road network, and the idea behind that was to create a network grid pattern of streets versus the linear and cul-de-sac pattern. And I think you'll see here, and I know Mr. Butler will probably speak to it, is that this property is unique in that it's long and narrow and doesn't really lend itself to that network grid pattern that our ordinance prefers. At this time, Mr. Butler, would you like to come up and give a presentation?
My name is Ned Butler. I'm representing Reliant Homes Georgia LLC. As discussed with the conceptual plan, and Mr. Gaither just said, because of these being septic lots, they have to be 100 foot wide, and to get to the minimum square footage required by the health department for a septic system, they'll end up being about 330 feet deep as the minimum. And this property at the front is just at 700 linear feet wide. And then when we get to the back, there's this creek that runs through the middle of it. So we're going to cross it once perpendicularly, but it doesn't allow us any room to do a lot that can fit a septic system and do a grid pattern road. So in the previous code, if you go out there or look at a map, it was every 1,200 feet you had to have a turnaround. So you come in and there's one turnaround on the left as you get past the retention pond. And then we were able to get to the cul-de-sac at the end of phase one. So talked with Chief Zidell because I figured it was in large part a fire safety issue of having that turnaround and discussing with the fire code. That's why we came with the request at 750 feet. And I am here to answer any questions or save the rest of my time for rebuttal.
Okay. Are there any questions of the applicant at this time? Okay, thank you, Mr. Butler. We do not have anyone signed up to speak in favor of this request, but we do have two signed up to speak in opposition. Ms. Rachel Hawkins?
Yes, that's us.
Okay, would you like to?
No.
I'll stand up.
Okay.
You put me on the spot. I'm okay. First time I ever come to one of these meetings, and I apologize.
That's quite all right.
My biggest thing was, I got a.
For the record, sir, before you get started, would you state your name?
My name's Wade Hawkins, or Richard Hawkins. I live at 1083 Riverstone Drive, which this subdivision is going to back up to. My biggest thing is I haven't been able to find anything on what it was laid out, how everything was laying out. And I come just to mainly see what was going on.
Sure.
I mean, it's going back up to me. One, now that I see stuff, I mean, I hate to see such small lots. You know, I moved out here to get away from houses stacked on top of one another. And one, was this thing pre-approved? I mean, to be built like it is, why now? I mean, are we changing, wanting something different? If we didn't know everything that was up front, I can understand. I mean, I'm in construction and things change, but most of the time this is a big outfit. This ain't the first time we're doing anything. This ain't the first subdivision they built. We should know the bylaws prior to wanting to come in and change after something's been approved the way it is. Just like, I mean, I have no problem with these houses, you know, what y'all done earlier. If we've changed bylaws to say our minimum square footage is 1,500, well, that's what it needs to be. 1,500, not reduce it for somebody, you know, somebody else. The next guy that comes up here, you may not know reduce his for some reason, but that's not. But if we do things and make things a certain way, and then we back up, we're doing just that. We're backing up. We ain't helping the community. We're going back to something less than what we're trying to work away from. And that was my biggest thing. I mean, if something's been approved the way it is, we need to work with that. I mean, and that's all I really got to say.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. All right. Ms. Hawkins, you are signed up. If you'd like to speak, you're welcome to.
No, I like you said enough.
Okay. And there's no one else signed up to speak against. Mr. Butler, you do have some time.
And I will get with Mr. Hawkins just to show him what the drawing looks like and give him a copy to take with him. My only comment to changing the rules, when this was rezoned, the linear footage allowed by the Social Circle Development Code was 1,200 feet before you required to have that turnaround. And between the approval of phase one and us getting ready to do phase two, Social Circle changed the code to make it required every 250 feet. So we are just working with the new code. Aesthetically, I don't think it looks very appealing to have a cul-de-sac every 2.5 lots, but we will do what the city requires.
Thank you, sir. At this time, we'll close the public hearing. And actually, just for public sake, phase two will require a preliminary plat. And obviously, the idea is if they're successful in getting the variance, then that helps his engineer move forward with design for the preliminary plat, which will be reviewed and approved by city staff. and then construction plans to construct the road and drainage, water and sewer into phase, or water, not sewer, into phase two, before a final plat can be filed in home construction. So, while the illustration provided is very similar to what may be the end product, it may be tweaked, changed due to soils, due to topography, due to a number of environmental issues that could change between now and the time that the applicant is able to move forward with the development. So, did
Yeah.
I say that incorrectly?
No, that's correct. Part of the new code process was to streamline preliminary plat processes and final plating, and it's all done at a staff level now. That is correct. But most of the time, it's between preliminary and final plat is usually very minor tweaks, unless you uncover something that's just really unique and magical. So, yeah, I think that's an accurate representation.
Okay. Are there any questions, comments, discussion? Basically, it seems kind of straightforward as far as limiting or reducing the number of turnarounds that would otherwise be required by our ordinance, which would be a bit hindering, given the narrow width of this property.
I have a comment.
Okay.
This is a lot of little circles. I would hate to live in a subdivision and every house I pass and get to the next one, I got to go around and turn around.
Can you imagine the cul-de-sac parties up? A bunch of them. I do have one question. Looking at this drawing here, and no, the applicant's not up there, I'm assuming these are within 750 feet of here? Or that's the intent?
Yes, that is the intent. And then you can see the turnarounds there. They're not full cul-de-sacs,
Right.
but that's the 750 feet came from the fire code. Yeah.
Okay, makes sense.
And the way the code is written is it has to be 750 feet from intersecting streets that are connected to a continuous street. So this main road, I forget the name of it off the top of my head, is connected to Alcova. So it has to have the 750 feet. But then once you get the turnoffs, you get a little bit more wiggle room.
Okay. No other comments or discussions? The chair will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
And what's the?
Recommend allowing 750.
All right, so we have a motion to recommend mayor and council to grant the variance to allow turnarounds up to, extend out to 750 linear feet.
Yes.
And we have a second by Ms. Brown. No other discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your hand. All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. So we do have some old business. It is the special use permit that we tabled last meeting in order for the applicant to gather some additional information. This was a special use permit for 708 Highway 11, request to allow for a data center. And it come back before us, and Ashley has put some information on our tables here in front of us. One looks like it is a commitment letter from Georgia Power that they'd be able to serve the site. Ashley, is there any other information you want to provide to us?
Yes, so the applicant provided these the first 2 pages that I gave you, this Georgia Power letter, that you can read at your leisure. I know I just got them to you. We also have an updated site plan with the 2 buildings that we were discussing last time on the west side of the property. They have been shifted further east, and the driveways for those 2 buildings will connect into that kind of thoroughfare that would connect Old Circle Road and State Route 11. That would be only for employees. It would be a secure, both of those access points would be secure access points. So you're only talking about one entrance on 11 instead of the two in the previous site plan. And then I also included some conditions that the chairman has come up with or are up for discussion, by the board. We don't have to have the public hearing again tonight because we've already done one. Here, there will be one tomorrow at a special call meeting by mayor and council. They tabled the public hearing to tomorrow night. So,
Ashley, has the applicant provided a letter of commitment from Newton County Water and Sewer Authority to provide water?
the applicant is here if the chair would like to entertain some discussion with the applicant. I believe I was supposed to receive a copy. I don't think I got one. Okay.
Can you guys,
Yeah.
the applicants, can you come forward? As
We'll pass it down.
So a couple of my questions last month, if you recall, were the commitment from Georgia Power. Thank you for providing that they would be able to provide power to your project. The other one was the commitment for water and sewer. The third question I asked was about the two buildings closest to Highway 11, if they could be eliminated for the number of reasons. One, they're state waters that variance would have to be granted to pipe over or eliminate those state waters the way they were. And also it is the gateway into the city and gateway into Newton County. No offense to the developers, but concrete tilt wall buildings are not the welcoming entrance to a gateway that I think a lot of cities would prefer not have. So the idea was if we could eliminate those and put the density of the project into the interior site. I do appreciate the efforts to push those two buildings further east and to eliminate the access from Highway 11. I know you guys said at the last meeting that you are not the end user, and end user will determine the necessary water usage, and that's something that with data centers we're learning, and I've thank you, because it's allowed me to go and educate myself more on the different cooling types and the amount of water that data centers use. Some information that came out from ARC back in November of last year that talked about the cooling systems. An evaporative cooling system, which is, I guess is called a swamp cooler, it's a water system, and they got a big vat, and the water transfers the heat, can use up to 3 million gallons of water a day. That's not on a day like today. That's like on a day, July, August, September, when our temperatures are reaching 100 degrees and humidity is, 85% and higher. But then a closed loop system can use as little as 100,000 gallons a day. And then those are the two most efficient cooling systems. And obviously, your end users, your clients, your customers, they want the most efficient cooling system because their investment is their computers, their servers. Has there been any discussion with your potential tenants about cooling, or is this still at too early a stage to have that discussion from your part?
The discussions have been just high level in nature with Newton County Water and Sewerage Authority, as far as, they're still in the conversation of what is available. That even the letter that you have there in front of you says it is in an area with significant capacities available. But it's up to Mike Hopkins to say exactly what is available and along what timeline, and just quite simply, nothing can be taken beyond what Mike can offer the property. And to the extent that a full evaporative cooling system couldn't be achieved because of limited water supply, they will use a different system.
And that's my concern, is you guys are showing 9 buildings, whether you build 9, 7, whatever configuration. Each building has its own cooling system, and that's my concern. I'm not a user of Newton County Water and Sewer Authority product. I get my water from Social Circle, but our neighbors get their water from Newton Water and Sewer. My concern is when we get into those periods of drought, it's going to be the residents that are asked to cut back watering, cut back water usage. We've all been there. So that's my concern on the environmental aspect of how can we assure that the cooling system used is the most efficient for the customer, but also the least intrusive to the resident. And that's why I was learning and asking about the closed loop system. I think you guys have answered a lot of the questions that I had. I did have some conditions that I'd like for this planning commission to consider. I think staff may have shared them with you. I've cleaned them up a little bit since then. One is to eliminate the 2 buildings closest to Highway 11 and state that no data center building shall be seen or have direct access from Highway 11. 2, evaporative type cooling is prohibited and may use air cooling or closed loop cooling system. 3, any proposed or required fencing, security, or around detention ponds, for example, shall be black vinyl coated. 4, a maximum density of 2,500,000 square feet of gross floor area. Currently, out of the 7 buildings into the interior of their site, you're at 2,411 square feet. A maximum parking of either 35 parking spaces per building or a total of 250 parking spaces evenly distributed around the building. So I understand one building being bigger may need more parking, but that you don't exceed that cap. Retaining wall shall be split face block or finished with brick or stone. Number 7, a minimum of 200-foot vegetative buffer between any portions of a building and a property line. Said buffer shall provide an opaque visual screen from adjacent streets, including I-20. 8, wall packs and exterior lighting mounted on buildings shall only be placed above service entrances and shall be full cutoff type fixtures. Down lighting so as to not cast light or glare towards property lines or streets and shall not be used for general site lighting. 9, parking lot lights shall not be taller than 20 feet, shall be full cutoff fixtures and shall not cast light or glare towards property lines. Site lighting and photometric plan shall be completed and not provide more than 7-foot candles at the base of the light. And 10, the power substations shall be screened from view on all sides facing a property line or adjacent street with a dense evergreen hedge that provides an opaque visual buffer. Said hedge shall be no less than 12 feet in height at the time of planting. Now again, these are just some of the things that I saw that could potentially lessen the visual and environmental impact to our neighbors south of us and to the neighbors around the property and those that are traveling along I-20. These are just for the Planning Commission to consider. Obviously, if you guys wanted to make some or all of these part of your recommendation, then I would certainly appreciate it. But it's something that I plan to also ask the City Council to consider. They have a call meeting tomorrow night to consider this request, and I think the idea of trying to minimize the externalities would be not only a good neighbor, but also allow this project to be successful and potentially a model for any projects like this that come to the city. So with that, yes, ma'am.
Do we have an opportunity to comment or to maybe provide some responses as it relates to the conditions that you read?
I'm happy to have that correspondence. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I don't think that we'll be able to, necessarily respond to everything, so I don't want my response to be taken as, we're in agreement with things that we don't respond to. But I did want to just point out a couple of things, and Brad might have some other things, but as it relates to the 200-foot buffer, just looking for a little clarity on that. Are you suggesting a 200-foot buffer along I-20.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I think that that would certainly be problematic, just looking at, you know, the goal of this was really to try to keep the development closer to 20, farther away from the homes that are at Surrey Chase, and really orient the development close. So, you know, when you think about what the code requires a 30-foot buffer. And so 200, and I am not a mathematician, so I won't even, you know, but it's multiple times that. And so we would just certainly suggest, you know, that that would be too much of a buffer to be able to achieve the revised site plan that you see before you, that does, you know, move the buildings and did certainly take into account certain things. So we would ask for the Planning Commission to consider either reducing that down to 30 feet or something more aligned with 30 feet as opposed to 200 feet, especially as it relates to I-20. I wanted to clarify on the density cap. Was the density cap 2.5 million square feet was what you had, okay.
Recommend, yes, just for talking point for suggestion, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then as it relates to the parking, if I'm understanding correctly, and I was trying to just make some notes, but I think that you were suggesting 35 parking spaces per building or a maximum of 250 total parking spaces.
Yes, ma'am.
We would ask to, you know, the code, I think, has a maximum of about 513 spaces. And so we would certainly, you know, I think be more code compliant would be our request, rather than just kind of arbitrarily reducing the number of parking spaces that we would be allowed.
To clarify on the code comment, our code is parking maximums. So the absolute maximum allowed would be in the neighborhood. I actually think it's a little less than 500 if I remember my calculations correctly. Because I did do the math on that. I just don't have my sticky note with me. So
It's one per 5,000.
yeah, so it would be in the with all 9 buildings, it would be in the neighborhood of, I think, 490 some odd parking spaces at maximum. So I just want to throw that out there as well.
So, but with data centers only employing about 35 to 40, 45 people at max, round the clock, and that's people coming and going, do you guys really, do your tenants really see the need for nearly 500 parking spaces?
No, in all likelihood, it won't. Your numbers are fairly accurate for what would be there. The only issue is on the larger buildings that were shown at about 350,000 square feet.
Yeah.
I could see it being maybe 40 on those, but again, it's not engineered, and my only hesitation would be the per building
Well, and
or total
that's,
max to not.
So-
It's probably gonna be, these buildings are closer to like 1 in 7,000
Okay.
feet. So if we had something closer to that, somewhere between what you're saying, what the code is now, we'd be totally fine with that. Because like you say, there's just not gonna be that much parking here anyway.
so it would something say a total of 315 parking spaces evenly distributed around the buildings?
I'd have to just look at the math on that, but that sounds
Or you can
about
trust me that
right.
the math is right?
Is that 1 in 7,000, what you just said?
Roughly.
Don't quote me on that.
Yeah,
I'm like Miss Sellers, I'm not a
yeah.
mathematician.
Yeah, well, because mine are one per 7,000. I mean, would you be open to just saying 1 per 7,000? I mean, that's obviously fewer parking spaces than what the code would allow, but it allows them to calculate it based on the ultimate, you know, the final size of the building, as the maximum. Certainly,
That would be 50 parking spaces per the 350,000.
So,
So for the 3 largest buildings, it'd be 50 parking spots.
well, taking the max density of 2.5 million divided by 7,000 gives you 357. So that'd be a total of 357 parking spaces.
If you did it that way. I was going off the site plan, yeah. So that would be,
Sorry, getting old.
no.
Okay, Ms. Sellers, I'm sorry. Any other discussion you wanted to?
I think we were okay on the lighting.
Yeah, less is more. Yeah. You're not open you're not open to the public, nothing like that.
Right.
All right. Commission members. So your thoughts, comments, questions?
From your,
For any of it?
from your recommended notes, number 10 mentions the hedge height to be no less than 12 feet at time of planting. If those two buildings closest to Highway 11 can be shifted back and not violate any other provisions of state, federal waters, anything like that, or any other code issue, I could see that being okay as long as number 10 or something to that degree is between that building and Highway 11. Just as you were kind of inclining not to see it.
So the number 10 is specific to the
Right, I was
substations?
referring to
Okay.
the height that mentioned in number 10.
Oh, okay,
The
okay, okay.
minimum requirement of growth in front of it to block it. Like I said, I don't know how far back those buildings can be moved.
I don't either. You know, and again, going off the plan that was in our applications, I do appreciate, as I said earlier, the applicant's attempt to shift those back and away from the road and not provide access straight off of Highway 11. I think they realized that DOT would likely not give them a curb cut at that location that close to the exit ramp and that close to the interstate entrance. But, you know, again, my attempt there was to allow for a space for something that's more of an entrance and not a sizable building, tilt wall construction that's in the neighborhood of probably between 35 and 50 feet in height. Ms. Brown, any comments, questions?
I don't have any. I'm actually looking at this, and this would be Social Circle over here.
No, this is in Social Circle.
Okay, and this is 11,
Mhm.
because this is where we get off on 20.
Yep. So the city
So-
limits has the leg that kind of swings around this way. So
Okay.
that's more
That
of
is-
the circle part of the city limits, and then we have that little leg, that little L shape that comes
Yeah,
down from the
yeah,
actual
that's what I'm looking at.
circle.
I'm like him, that is pretty close to the road right there, though. And then you gotta come up to get on 20.
And again, these are just recommendations. The city council,
I get
they
you.
may take some, all, or none of these and do with it as they wish. But again, trying to minimize the externalities and the impacts, negative impacts is the thought process. And like I said, one of my questions is, why should we approve this when the property taxes have not been paid into the city since it was annexed, so to speak, since 2009? You know, I think if I'm a council member, I would ask that question, but I'm not a council member. Right, back pay. I know, we can't go all the way back to 2009, I don't believe, but, that's some of the questions the city council has to ask.
Yeah, I don't think that's in the purview of this board.
And then the area north of the Spine Road that's shown on the site plan, it was part of the rezoning, correct? No, it wasn't.
No.
So-
The rezone is only for like the road and south.
Yep, so the city council will approve the rezoning for road south, but to the north, it's still zoned AG. Yes, sir, yes.
No, not the colored, so everything that is within the property,
That's grayed out.
that's grayed out, so for the
That-
audience members, it would be basically, everything from,
That's what it takes.
where's my mouse here? From this creek, this grayed out portion
Yeah.
here.
So, and realistically, looking at that portion, you've got some state waters in the form of streams and a lake, so the buildable area of that is pretty minimal. But on the back half of that, north of where we're talking in that green spot, John, it's unknown.
As far as the grayed out stuff goes, that's not part of this request, so we can't really.
No, that's what I said, it's
Yeah.
unknown, it's uncertain what's going to occur there, but it's also uncertain what's going to occur. So the special use permit, if approved, would be approved for all the area in green.
Colored, yeah.
My question is,
Microphone, please.
my question is, the lighting can't be, you said the lighting, on 20 is, what kind of lighting will it be?
So the idea with these conditions would be to minimize the amount of lighting
Lighting.
coming from the site so as to not create the glare. You've been around where you can see the stars at night. Well, now you're getting to where you can't see the stars at night, and that's due to the amount of glare coming from new developments, street lights, building lights, so on and so forth. We have a resource at our backyard at Harlever Creek that's pretty unique, and that's the observatory. They struggle when the lights don't turn out at night, so the applicant sounds like they're okay with that idea that the lighting can't, you're not trying to light the whole site. If you drive east at night towards Madison right now, you'll see Facebook's data center lit up, and it's, despite the scant buffer of trees between I-20 and, I forgot the name,
Sainsbury's.
Takata.
Oh, Takata, yeah.
You can see that data center, and it sits way off the road. And it's visual light.
We also have a pretty good light ordinance too, that we put in the UDC as well, that we spent some time on and stuff.
So, but these are some of to get the thought processes flowing, again, to minimize the negative impact. That's what this was for.
Reason I asked because, the distance from getting off on 20 and down to the Social Circle Road, that's a nice little distance.
Mm-hmm.
With the lighting glare.
Yeah, and the idea is that you won't see these buildings, and that's the idea. For a neighbor like this, it's there but not seen or heard, and that was the idea behind some of these conditions, is that it would allow the use to occur, but be a minimal visual impact. Is it possible to consider the two buildings closest to Highway 11 up in that general area?
It's not I don't believe so. There's conditions from the power company on where buildings have to go relative to where power's coming from and the substation and so just so y'all are aware, the last conversation we had with Georgia Power, we're actually gonna be able to do this with just one substation, eliminate the one on the eastern side of the site. So it's the one that's in the middle there. It's just a matter of proximity to that substation, and you may just create more problems moving
You
it
said
closer
this
to the
one or
residents.
this
Yeah, so
one?
the one on the right will be eliminated on the east.
This one.
Yes,
Okay, so the one closest to Old Social Circle Road.
yeah.
Good to know.
But that's a kind of a working plan at the moment, but that's what we think's gonna happen, so. It could be possible, Scott, but it's just impossible for me to really say. There's just different constraints that
Understood.
I can't necessarily speak to.
Okay. Well, with no other discussion, the chair will entertain a motion for this item. And, again, looking at proposed condition number 5, from 250 parking spaces evenly distributed to 357 parking spaces evenly distributed. But I would appreciate if the commission would give some consideration to the 10 proposed conditions as we talked about.
I'd like to make one adjustment.
What's that?
Number 7, I agree not to take away from the buffer on the neighborhood side. But I want more than 30 feet from the interstate.
I believe the setback is 50. So just food for thought there. The building setback line is 50 feet. I think we did some rough measurements. The closest building was 147 feet from the property line, or right at 150 feet.
So using,
50 plus the 100. and what-
I'm just giving you information. So you could reduce it down to 150 feet if you, so.
What I'm getting at is you said 50-foot setback and then the 150 that you just mentioned.
Well, that would make it 200.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. Can you turn your microphone on also? Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's what I was trying to get, where the numbers were coming from. Okay. Yeah, I will say I don't like pushing it closer to the neighborhood. I'd rather push it to the interstate if you had to move it, or, you know, if it's gotta sit somewhere. I'd rather sit closer to the interstate.
using the scale, and I'm sorry I covered the scale up, but this dialogue box measuring from the edge of that closest building to the edge of what appears to be the travel lane of the exit ramp, or travel lane of the interstate itself.
Yeah.
It's 243 feet. So that gives you some kind of reference. John, you see what I'm, yes, sir.
And that dash line all the way around the property is at 50 feet of setback
From the property line.
from the property line,
From the
right?
exit,
So everything from the property line south to that, to the interstate, that's all gonna be 20 right of way. So that's, you know, outside the property, technically.
So currently then, as this drawing sits, based on the scale from the drawing, that closest building is 243 from the road,
From the edge of I-20, yes.
but we don't know what it is off of the buffer, off of the setback.
Off the setback, I think it's about, not including the proposed, kind of travel lane right there, or parking lot pull through. Off of the setback, I think it's about a little less than 100, right in the neighborhood of 100. I think we did some rough measurements, and it was about 143 feet from the property line, if I
This is your
remember
drawing?
correctly.
It varies.
Yeah, I think that dimension's about right.
Yeah, I think 145 would be the rounded.
Yeah. But how this is worded is a vegetative buffer, so it wouldn't satisfy a 143-foot vegetative buffer. It would be a building setback, because as Ashley said, there'd be
Right,
some
and
other
that's kind of
improvements
where I was
required.
going with, if it's already at 140 some odd feet from the setback, or from the
Property line.
property line, I'd rather leave it there than push it closer to the houses. If anything, I'd rather push it to the interstate. Not to put it right on the line, but I'd rather sacrifice the interstate traffic versus the neighborhood. So that one,
Excuse me, I hate to interrupt, but I just have a quick question, maybe you could clarify. When you were talking about the buffer between 20,
Mr. Miller, I'm sorry, we don't, I'm happy to talk to you after the meeting, like, I'm sure the applicant would too, but we had the public hearing last meeting, so since it was tabled, John, what were you saying?
no, I was just saying, if anything, I'd push it closer to the interstate if I was gonna push it and give more buffer
Yep.
to the neighborhood side. But this drawing, as they have it's at 140. It's within 60 feet of the 200 that you put on there, or that the note says on
Yeah,
it. So,
And it is elevated, being that you got a retaining wall, and, the grade is built up.
mhm.
So, I mean, do you feel more confident with a 75-foot or 100-foot?
I would say no further than 100 foot from the I-20 side.
To a minimum 100-foot vegetative buffer instead of the 200, reducing it by half.
Yeah, because we're at 100 and ballpark 140 on the building now. What would you say that buffer would be
In the
at
space.
140?
is-
It'd probably be right at where you see the pull through between the parking lots is. It'd probably be right at the edge of that 100-foot.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty close to the edge of the parking lot now, so,
the wall can be in the buffer.
yeah.
The circulation round circulation can be in the buffer. And in between the top of the wall and the circulation road, or between the circulation road and the building, could be screening.
So ultimately, the building can actually push south.
But if you go to 100-foot,
Right. And that buffers the neighborhood more. It takes that 40 feet, and basically puts it on the other side and gives the neighborhood more of a buffer. And you still have the 100 foot from the interstate.
Ms. Brown, any thoughts on that?
It makes a lot of sense to me. We gotta get used to it. It really does make a lot of sense to me. That 150, I did the math, 150 and 50, that would be that 200-foot buffer, but yeah, if you move it a little bit, for the people that live out there, yeah, that makes sense.
All right. What about you? Okay, John?
Just to clarify, you said 357 split evenly parking spaces?
That was what, if you keep the maximum density cap of 2.5 million, and then you divide that by 7,000, you get right at 357, 358 parking spaces.
Okay.
I didn't see the decimal points on your math there, but,
Is that for motorcycle parking or the decimal points?
well, if you go over half of a parking space,
Golf
it's a,
cart parking.
yeah.
Golf cart parking. Yeah, the only other
I don't
thing,
think we don't allow for golf carts out this far, so.
the only other thing I had was, like I said, on those two buildings on the interstate, I don't see a problem keeping them if you can push them all the way back and buffer all the way to Highway 11 where you can't see them.
Is there a potential to move those two buildings where the substation is being eliminated?
Didn't think it was that.
Probably not.
To move
To move these two buildings to this side of the site? Probably not.
I mean, I got similar to what Scott asked. Potentially, I think is the answer.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, but like I said, then you're further away from that other substation, and there's limitations to how far you can get before maybe you need two again, and that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
All right. Like I said, Chair will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. Motion based on the conversation over the last 10 items and the corrections on the parking and the setback from the interstate.
Okay. I'm gonna need some clarification. So you are making a motion to approve with the 10 conditions discussed with the amendment to number 5, capping the parking at 357, or 1 per 7,000, or just the 357?
What's the difference? What is it if you do 1 per 7,000?
If you do 1 per 7,000, it depends on how many buildings there are.
Well, you're still gonna get the same number if it's.
Oh,
capped
yeah,
at
I'm sorry.
2,500.
You're right.
25.
I'm sorry. My brain is fried.
Go with the 357.
357, okay. Maximum parking at 357 spaces. And then what is the reduction of the buffer that you are going with? The number,
I say 100 feet.
100 feet, okay.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second it.
We have a second. No other discussion. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hands. All right, motion passed unanimous. Ladies and gentlemen, again, this one item for the special use permit will be heard by the mayor and council tomorrow night at a special call meeting. It will be held at the Social Circle Theater. The other items that you heard tonight, the rezoning request and the 2 variance requests, will be heard at the city council's next regularly scheduled meeting. Ashley, we don't have any new business, therefore no announcements. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
A second.
Motion and a second. No other discussion. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. All right, meeting adjourned.